The first thing Jessica noticed about the man standing in the mansion's kitchen was not his expensive watch. It was his tired eyes. He stood there in a simple gray sweater, holding an empty cup of coffee as though he had no idea where anything belonged. Jessica had only been working the mansion for 3 days. She had been told one thing about the owner. Kong Ji-hyun was a cold, private billionaire who rarely spoke to anyone. But the man standing in front of her looked nothing like the powerful businessman whose photograph had appeared on the news that morning. He looked ordinary, almost helpless. Jessica glanced at him. "Are you hungry?" The man hesitated. "Yes." She smiled gently. "Sit down. I'll make you something." He stared at her. "You're not afraid of me?" Jessica laughed softly. Why should I be afraid of a hungry man? For the first time in years, Kong Ji-hyun didn't know what to say, because Jessica had no idea who he really was. She thought he was just another employee. She didn't know that the mansion belonged to him. She didn't know that the clothes he was wearing cost more than everything she owned. And she certainly didn't know that he had deliberately disguised himself as a poor, ordinary man to test her. But what Ji-hyun didn't expect was that Jessica wouldn't just pass his test. She would make him question why he had spent his entire life testing people in the first place. And before the story was over, the billionaire who believed money could reveal everyone's true character would discover something money could never buy. A woman who loved him before she ever knew he was rich. Welcome to Afrokorea Seoul Stories, where African hearts meet Korean romance in beautiful stories filled with love, emotions, unexpected encounters, secrets, and unforgettable moments. If you love stories about Nigerian women and Korean men finding love despite different backgrounds, stay with us until the end. Because sometimes the person standing in front of you is not who you think they are. And sometimes the person you are trying to test is actually the person who will change your entire life. Now, let's begin. Jessica had imagined many things about Seoul. She had imagined the bright lights, the tall buildings, the beautiful streets, the cafes, the snow she had only seen in pictures. But she had never imagined standing outside a massive Korean mansion with one small suitcase in her hand, wondering whether she had made the biggest mistake of her life. The cold morning air touched her face. Jessica pulled her coat tighter around herself. She looked up at the enormous gates in front of her. The property looked more like a palace than a home. Behind the tall black gate stood a magnificent modern mansion surrounded by perfectly trimmed gardens, elegant stone pathways, and enormous glass windows. Jessica looked down at the address written on the piece of paper in her hand. This was definitely the place. She took a deep breath. Then she pressed the intercom. A few seconds later, a woman's voice answered. "Who is this?" "My name is Jessica. I was hired as a domestic assistant." There was a pause. Then the gate opened. Jessica slowly walked inside. She had worked as a housekeeper before. She knew how to clean. She knew how to cook. She knew how to organize a home. But she had never worked anywhere remotely close to a place like this. A middle-aged Korean woman approached her. "Jessica?" "Yes." "My name is Mrs. Han. I manage the household." Jessica bowed politely. "Nice to meet you." Mrs. Han looked at Jessica's suitcase. "You came alone?" "Yes." "From Nigeria?" Jessica smiled. "Yes." Mrs. Han studied her for a moment. Then her expression softened. "You must be tired." "A little." "Come inside." Jessica followed her through the entrance. The moment she stepped inside, she became speechless. The mansion was breathtaking. A massive chandelier hung above the entrance. The marble floor reflected the morning light. Beautiful paintings decorated the walls. There was a staircase that curved upward toward the second floor. Everything looked perfect, almost too perfect. Jessica suddenly felt nervous. "Mrs. Han?" "Yes." "Is the owner very strict?" Mrs. Han stopped walking. For a moment, she didn't answer. Then she said quietly, "Mr. Kong doesn't like unnecessary conversation." Jessica nodded. "I understand. He doesn't like noise." "Okay." "He doesn't like people touching his personal belongings." "Of course." "And most importantly," Mrs. Han looked directly at her, "don't ask him personal questions." Jessica nodded again. "I won't." Mrs. Han continued walking. But Jessica noticed something strange. The woman looked almost worried. Mrs. Han. Yes. Is Mr. Kong difficult? Mrs. Han gave a small smile. You'll find out yourself. Before Jessica could ask anything else, they reached the kitchen. This is where you'll spend most of your time. Jessica looked around. The kitchen was larger than the entire apartment she had rented in Seoul. There were modern appliances everywhere. A huge refrigerator, a professional stove, multiple ovens. Everything was spotless. Mrs. Han handed her a set of house keys. You will work from 8 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon, unless there's a special occasion. Jessica nodded. Understood. Your room is on the staff floor. Thank you. Mrs. Han hesitated. Then she added, and Jessica, yes. Don't expect to see Mr. Kong very often. Why? He leaves early and returns late. Jessica smiled. That sounds like a busy man. You could say that. Mrs. Han walked away. Jessica watched her disappear down the hallway. Then she looked around the enormous kitchen. She placed her suitcase beside the doorway and quietly whispered to herself, Okay, Jessica, this is your new beginning. She didn't know it yet, but it really was. Only not in the way she expected. Across Seoul, inside a completely different building, Kang Ji-hyun sat at the head of a long conference table. Around him were 12 executives. Nobody spoke. Ji-hyun had just finished reviewing the company's quarterly report. He closed a folder. That's all. Everyone immediately began gathering their documents. One of the senior directors remained seated. Mr. Kong. Ji-hyun looked at him. Yes. I wanted to ask about the new household employee. Ji-hyun's expression changed slightly. Jessica? Yes. What about her? Why did you personally approve her? Ji-hyun leaned back. Because I wanted someone new. The director looked confused. Is there a problem with the previous staff? No. Then why change them? Ji-hyun looked through the glass wall toward Seoul's skyline. For years, people had approached him for the same reasons. His money, his influence, his family name, his company, his connections. He had become tired of wondering whether anyone could see the man beneath the billionaire. So he had decided to do something unusual. He would hide his identity. Not forever. Just long enough to learn something. He wanted to know how people treated someone they believed had nothing. His director frowned. Mr. Kong, are you sure this is necessary? Ji-hyun stood. I want to know something. What? Ji-hyun looked at him. If someone believes I have nothing to offer them, will they still treat me like a human being? The director didn't answer. Ji-hyun picked up his coat. Cancel my evening appointments. Where are you going? Home. The director looked surprised. You're going home early? Ji-hyun gave him a faint smile. Tonight, I'm not Kang Ji-hyun. He walked away. And nobody in that office knew what he was about to discover. Because the woman he had chosen to test wasn't going to behave the way he expected. She wasn't impressed by wealth. She wasn't impressed by status. And she wasn't looking for a rich man. Jessica was simply looking for a place where she could work honestly and build a better life. That made her dangerous to a man like Ji-hyun. Because for the first time, he had met someone who had absolutely no reason to pretend. That evening, Jessica finished preparing dinner just before 7. She had been told that Mr. Kong might not come home until late, so she wasn't expecting anyone. She was wiping the kitchen counter when she heard the front door open. Jessica froze. Footsteps approached slowly. Then a man appeared in the kitchen doorway. He was tall, handsome, quiet, and completely unfamiliar. Jessica looked at him carefully. He wore a simple gray sweater, dark trousers, and an old-looking pair of sneakers. He didn't look like the billionaire whose photograph she had seen in the newspaper. Excuse me, Jessica said. The man stopped. Yes. Can I help you? He looked slightly surprised. You're Jessica? Yes. He smiled. My name is Ji-hyun. Jessica waited. Nothing else came. She frowned slightly. Are you a friend of Mr. Kong? Ji-hyun almost laughed. Instead, he nodded. Something like that. Jessica looked toward the hallway. Is Mr. Kong home? No. Oh. Ji-hyun glanced at the kitchen. Are you preparing dinner? Yes. It smells good. Thank you. He stood there for another moment. Then his stomach made a quiet sound. Jessica heard it. She tried not to smile. Ji-hyun looked embarrassed. I'm sorry. Jessica laughed. You don't have to apologize for being hungry. She opened the refrigerator. There's enough food for another person. Ji-hyun stared at her. Really? Of course. You don't mind? Jessica shook her head. Why would I? She placed another plate on the table. Sit. Ji-hyun hesitated. You're not going to ask who I am? Jessica looked at him. You said your name is Ji-hyun. That isn't much information. Jessica smiled. Then you can tell me more if you want. Ji-hyun sat down. For some reason, his heart felt strangely light. No one spoke to him like this. People usually waited for permission before sitting near him. Jessica simply told him to sit. She placed the food in front of him. Try it. Ji-hyun picked up his chopsticks. He took one bite. His eyes widened. This is good. Jessica smiled proudly. Really? Very good. She returned to cleaning. Ji-hyun watched her. You're not eating? I already ate. You cooked all this and didn't save yourself some? Jessica shrugged. I did. Then why aren't you eating? She smiled. Because I'm working. Ji-hyun looked at her for a long moment. Then he said quietly, you shouldn't always put yourself last. Jessica stopped wiping the counter. She turned toward him. That sounds like something someone who doesn't know me would say. Ji-hyun smiled. Maybe you're right. Jessica studied him. There was something unusual about this man. He looked poor, but he spoke like someone who had experienced a very different life. Before she could ask anything, Mrs. Han entered the kitchen. She stopped immediately. Her eyes moved from Jessica to Ji-hyun, then back to Jessica. Mr. Kong. Ji-hyun looked at her. Mrs. Han. Jessica's eyes widened. She looked at the man sitting at the table, then at Mrs. Han, then back at him. You... Ji-hyun stood. Jessica stared at him in disbelief. You're Mr. Kong? He nodded. Yes. Her face became red. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. She immediately bowed. I didn't know. Ji-hyun smiled. It's okay. I thought you were... She stopped. Someone else. He smiled. Yes. Jessica covered her face for a second. I told you to sit. You did. And I told you to try the food. You did that too. Jessica couldn't help laughing. Mrs. Han smiled quietly. Ji-hyun looked at Jessica. I'm glad you didn't know. Jessica frowned. Why? He didn't answer. Instead, he picked up his plate. Because dinner tastes better this way. 3 days later, Jessica had settled into the household. She became comfortable with the kitchen. She learned Ji-hyun's favorite breakfast. She discovered that he liked his coffee without sugar. She also discovered something nobody had told her. Ji-hyun rarely smiled around other people, but around her, he did. One afternoon, Jessica accidentally dropped a glass in the dining room. It shattered across the floor. She immediately froze. Oh no! She hurried to pick up the pieces. Jessica. She looked up. Ji-hyun was standing behind her. Don't touch them. I'm sorry. You'll cut yourself. I can clean it. I know. He gently took the broom from her. I'll do it. Jessica stared at him. You're gonna clean it? Why not? Because you're the owner. He looked at her. And you're a person. She smiled. That doesn't answer my question. He smiled back. I don't think being rich means I'm incapable of cleaning a floor. Jessica laughed. They cleaned the broken glass together. Their hands reached the broom at the same time. Their fingers touched. Both of them stopped. For one brief moment, neither spoke. Jessica slowly pulled her hand away. Ji-hyun looked into her eyes. Something changed. Something neither of them was ready to name. Then Jessica whispered, Thank you. Ji-hyun nodded. You're welcome. He walked away. But halfway down the hallway, he stopped. He looked back at her. Jessica was still standing there. Their eyes met again. And for the first time, Ji-hyun wondered whether his little experiment had already become something much more dangerous. Because he had originally wanted to discover whether Jessica cared about his money. Now, he was beginning to care about her. And Jessica had absolutely no idea that the man slowly capturing her heart was the same billionaire she had promised herself she would never fall for. The rain started unexpectedly that evening. By 6 o'clock, Seoul was covered in a soft gray mist. Jessica stood near the mansion's entrance, looking through the glass doors. She had forgotten her umbrella. Ji-hyun noticed her standing there. Are you waiting for someone? No. Then why aren't you leaving? Jessica pointed outside. I forgot my umbrella. Ji-hyun picked up his. You can use mine. She shook her head. What about you? I have another one. Jessica smiled. Thank you. She reached for it. Their fingers touched. Again, neither pulled away immediately. Ji-hyun looked at her. Be careful. I will. Jessica stepped outside. But before she reached the gate, Ji-hyun called her. Jessica. She turned. Yes. Wait. He walked toward her with another umbrella. You said you had another one. I changed my mind. Jessica laughed. So you follow me outside just to give me another umbrella? Yes. That's strange. Maybe. They stood beneath the rain. The mansion lights reflected beautifully on the wet ground. Jessica looked at him. You know, you're not as cold as people say. Ji-hyun smiled. Who says I'm cold? Mrs. Han. He laughed. She's been talking about me? Only a little. Then I should be worried. Jessica laughed again. For several seconds, they simply stood there. The rain continued falling. Ji-hyun looked at her face. He wanted to tell her everything. He wanted to tell her that he wasn't the ordinary man she sometimes imagined him to be. He wanted to tell her that he had been watching her because he wanted to know whether she was genuine. But he couldn't. Not yet. Because he was afraid of what would happen when she discovered the truth. Jessica smiled. I should go. Okay. She turned away. Jessica, she looked back. Thank you. For what? For making this house feel less empty. Her smile disappeared for a moment. She looked at him carefully. Then she said softly, You're welcome. And she walked away. Ji-hyun remained under the rain long after she had disappeared from sight. Jessica had become accustomed to Ji-hyun's presence. She found herself noticing small things about him. The way he loosened his tie when he was tired. The way he stared at the city from a balcony. The way he always asked whether she had eaten. And the way his expression changed whenever she looked sad. But Jessica kept reminding herself of one thing. He was her employer. Nothing more. She couldn't afford to confuse kindness with love. One afternoon, Jessica received a phone call from home. She answered quietly. Hello. Her smile slowly disappeared. Yes, I'm okay. She listened. I understand. Another pause. No, don't worry about me. Her voice became softer. I'll figure it out. She ended the call. She stood alone in the kitchen for several seconds. Then she wiped her eyes. She didn't realize Ji-hyun had entered. Jessica? She quickly turned around. Yes. Were you crying? No. He looked at her. You were? She smiled. I'm fine. He didn't believe her. Did something happen? Nothing serious. Tell me. Jessica shook her head. I don't want to bother you. You won't. She looked down. My family is having a difficult time. Ji-hyun remained silent. Jessica continued. I've been sending money home, but things are still difficult. Do you need money? She immediately looked up. No. He raised an eyebrow. I didn't even finish the question. I know what you're going to say. Then answer it. Jessica smiled sadly. I don't want your money. Why? Because I came here to work. Ji-hyun looked at her with admiration. You could accept help. I know. But you won't. Not unless I truly need it. Ji-hyun nodded. He understood. Jessica wasn't proud. She was simply determined to stand on her own. He wanted to help her. But he also knew that giving her money would destroy the very thing he admired about her. So, instead, he asked, what would make things easier? She thought for a moment. Nothing. Jessica. She smiled. Maybe just tell me that things will get better. Ji-hyun's expression softened. They will. She looked at him. How do you know? Because you're strong. Jessica's eyes filled with tears. She quickly looked away. Ji-hyun stepped closer. You don't have to be strong every minute. She looked back at him. Sometimes I don't know how to stop. Then let someone stand beside you. The words hung between them. Jessica's heart began beating faster. She whispered, Would you? Ji-hyun looked into her eyes. Yes. That weekend, Ji-hyun did something unusual. He came home early. Jessica was preparing dinner when he entered the kitchen. Jessica, she turned. Yes. Are you busy tonight? She looked around. I have some cleaning to finish. Forget it. She laughed. That's easy for you to say. He smiled. Come with me. Where? Dinner. Jessica looked surprised. Dinner? Yes. Outside? Yes. She hesitated. I don't think that's appropriate. Why? Because you're my employer. Ji-hyun became quiet. Then he said, Then don't think of me as your employer. Jessica stared at him. What should I think of you as? He smiled. Someone who wants to have dinner with you. Her heart skipped. She looked away. Just dinner? For now. She laughed. For now. Ji-hyun smiled. You ask too many questions. You give suspicious answers. They both laughed. That evening, they went to a small restaurant in Seoul. It wasn't luxurious. There were no cameras, no business associates, no bodyguards. Just two people sitting across from each other. Jessica looked around. I like this place. I knew you would. How? You don't seem like someone who enjoys places where everyone is trying to impress everyone else. She smiled. You've been paying attention. Maybe. They ordered dinner. During the meal, they talked about everything. Jessica told him about growing up in Nigeria. She told him about the food she missed, the music she loved, the sound of family members talking late into the night. Ji-hyun listened carefully. Then she asked him, What about you? What about me? Your family. His smile faded slightly. My parents died when I was young. Jessica's expression softened. I'm sorry. He nodded. I grew up with my grandmother. Were you close? Very. What happened? She passed away several years ago. Jessica reached across the table. Her hand rested gently over his. Ji-hyun looked down at their hands. Then at her. I know what it feels like to lose someone, she whispered. He gently turned his hand and held hers. For the first time, neither of them pretended the moment meant nothing. They simply sat there, holding hands. And somewhere between the quiet restaurant and the soft Seoul lights outside, the line between employer and employee began disappearing. But neither of them noticed a woman standing across the street. She had seen Ji-hyun. She knew exactly who he was. And she knew something Jessica didn't. Kang Ji-hyun wasn't pretending to be poor anymore. He was pretending to be ordinary. And sooner or later, Jessica was going to discover the truth. The following morning, Jessica woke up with a strange feeling. She couldn't explain it. Perhaps it was because of the dinner. Perhaps it was because of the way Ji-hyun had held her hand. Or perhaps it was because, for the first time since arriving in Seoul, she felt like she wasn't completely alone. She entered the kitchen early. Ji-hyun was already there. He stood beside the window with a cup of coffee. When he heard her footsteps, he turned. Good morning. Good morning. They smiled at each other. Neither mentioned the previous evening, but both remembered it. Jessica began preparing breakfast. Ji-hyun watched her quietly. Then he said, Jessica, yes. About last night? She stopped. Yes. I enjoyed it. Her cheeks became warm. So, did I? He smiled. Good. Before they could say more, a black car stopped outside the mansion. A sharply dressed Korean man stepped out. Jessica recognized him. He was one of the executives she had seen in a newspaper photograph. He entered the house quickly. Mr. Kang. Jessica froze. Ji-hyun's expression changed. I told you not to come here. I had no choice. The executive glanced toward Jessica. Ji-hyun immediately stepped between them. Not here. The man lowered his voice. Sir, the board is becoming impatient. I'll handle it. And your family has begun asking questions. Ji-hyun's jaw tightened. I said I'll handle it. Jessica stood quietly in the kitchen. She didn't understand what was happening. The executive turned to leave. But before he did, he looked at Jessica again. Something about his expression made her uncomfortable. After he left, Jessica looked at Ji-hyun. Who was that? A business associate. She nodded, but something didn't feel right. Later that afternoon, Jessica was carrying laundry upstairs when she heard voices coming from the study. She recognized Ji-hyun's voice. I don't want her involved. A woman's voice answered. You can't keep lying forever. Jessica stopped. She hadn't intended to listen, but then the woman said something that made her heart stop. She deserves to know that you're Kong Ji-hyun. Jessica's hand tightened around the laundry basket. Kong Ji-hyun? She knew that name. Everyone in Korea knew it. The billionaire businessman. The owner of one of the country's largest technology groups. Jessica's heart began pounding. The voice continued. You hired that Nigerian woman because you wanted to test her. Jessica's eyes widened. Her breathing became shallow. She slowly stepped backward. Then she heard Ji-hyun say, I never expected to fall for her. Jessica closed her eyes. The laundry basket nearly slipped from her hands. He had been testing her. Everything suddenly made sense. The simple clothes, the strange questions, the way he watched her, the restaurant, the kindness, the secrets. She had thought their connection was real. Now, she didn't know what was real anymore. Jessica quietly walked away before they could discover her. That evening, Ji-hyun noticed immediately that something was wrong. Jessica barely spoke. She avoided his eyes. She answered every question with one word. Jessica, yes. Are you upset? No. You've said that 3 times today. She continued arranging dishes. I'm just tired. Ji-hyun stepped closer. Look at me. She didn't. Jessica, finally, she turned. Their eyes met. He immediately knew. Something had changed. What happened? She forced a smile. Nothing. He reached for her hand. She pulled it away. Ji-hyun froze. Why did you do that? Jessica's eyes became glossy. Because I don't know whether I should. What does that mean? She took a breath. Who are you? His expression changed. What? Who are you really? Silence. Jessica stared at him. I heard everything. Ji-hyun's heart dropped. You heard me talking? Yes. She looked hurt. You've been testing me. He took a step toward her. Jessica, listen. Was any of it real? Yes. Was the man sitting across from me at that restaurant real? Yes. Or was that part of your experiment too? No. His voice was firm. I swear it wasn't. Jessica looked away. You lied to me? I did. Why? Ji-hyun struggled to find the right words. Because I want to know if someone could care about me without knowing my money. Jessica laughed sadly. And you chose me? Yes. Why? Because you were different. She looked at him. You don't understand what you've done. I know. No, you don't. Tears rolled down her cheeks. You came into my life pretending to be someone else, and I trusted you. Ji-hyun's heart broke. I never wanted to hurt you, but you did. He remained silent. Jessica wiped her tears. I don't care that you're rich. I know. I don't care about your mansion. I know. I don't even care about your company. I know. She looked directly into his eyes. What I cared about was whether you were honest with me. Ji-hyun had no answer. Jessica turned away. I need time. Jessica, please. He stopped. She walked upstairs. For the first time in years, Kong Ji-hyun felt completely powerless. His money couldn't fix this. His influence couldn't fix this. His name couldn't fix this. The one thing Jessica wanted from him was the one thing he had failed to give her. The truth. The next morning, Jessica packed her suitcase. She didn't want to leave Seoul. She didn't want to leave the job. And, most painfully, she didn't want to leave Ji-hyun. But she knew she needed distance. Mrs. Han stood in the doorway. You're really leaving? Jessica nodded. I need to. Where will you go? I don't know yet. Mrs. Han sighed. Jessica. Yes. He really cares about you. Jessica looked down. I know. Then why leave? Because love without trust becomes painful. Mrs. Han became quiet. Jessica zipped her suitcase. She walked downstairs. Ji-hyun was waiting near the entrance. He looked exhausted. He hadn't slept. Jessica stopped several feet away. He didn't try to block her. He simply looked at her. I won't stop you. She nodded. Thank you. I want you to know something. She waited. I don't regret meeting you. Her eyes filled with tears. Neither do I. But I regret lying to you. She looked at him. I should have trusted you enough to tell you the truth. Jessica didn't respond. Ji-hyun continued. I thought I was testing you. He smiled sadly. But you were actually testing me. Jessica frowned. How? You showed me kindness when you thought I had nothing. He paused. You showed me respect when you thought I was nobody. His voice softened. And when you discovered I was rich, you didn't suddenly become impressed. Jessica's eyes filled with tears. You were the first person who made me want to become better than the man I had been. She looked away. Ji-hyun, I won't ask you to forgive me today. He stepped aside. I'll wait. Jessica picked up her suitcase. She walked toward the door. Then she stopped. She looked back. Ji-hyun was still standing there. Goodbye, she whispered. He nodded. Take care of yourself, Jessica. She walked outside. The door closed behind her. Ji-hyun stood alone in the mansion. The enormous house suddenly felt empty again. But this time he knew exactly why. Because the woman who had made it feel like home was gone. And he had only himself to blame. 3 days passed. The mansion felt different without Jessica. Ji-hyun returned to his old routine. Meetings, business calls, endless reports, expensive dinners, people constantly surrounding him. Yet none of it felt satisfying. Every morning, he unconsciously looked toward the kitchen. Every evening, he expected to hear Jessica's footsteps. Sometimes he even caught himself remembering the little things. The way she laughed when he complained about the food being too spicy. The way she reminded him to eat breakfast. The way she always opened the curtains in the morning because she believed sunlight made people happier. He missed her more than he had ever expected. One evening, Mrs. Han entered his study. You haven't been eating properly. I eat. You're pretending. Ji-hyun looked at her. She placed a small container on the desk. What is that? Something Jessica left behind. He immediately looked up. What? Mrs. Han opened the container. Inside was a simple homemade meal. There was a small note attached. Don't skip dinner just because you're sad. Ji-hyun stared at the words. For several seconds, he couldn't speak. Mrs. Han quietly left the room. Ji-hyun picked up the note again. He smiled despite the ache in his chest. Even after leaving, Jessica was still caring about him. Jessica had found a small room in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't luxurious. It wasn't large, but it was hers. She began working at a small cafe during the day. She wanted to prove something to herself. She could build a life without depending on Ji-hyun. Still, she couldn't stop thinking about him. Every time she heard a familiar Korean voice, her heart reacted. Every time she saw a black luxury car, she wondered whether he was inside. She hated that she still cared. One evening, her co-worker noticed her staring through the cafe window. You look sad. Jessica smiled. I'm fine. You say that too much. Jessica laughed softly. You're beginning to sound like someone I know. Someone special? Jessica became quiet. Yes. Her co-worker smiled. You still love him. Jessica looked down. I don't know. But deep inside, she did know. She missed Ji-hyun. She missed his quiet smile. She missed their conversations. She missed the way he listened. And most of all, she missed the feeling of being understood. One rainy evening, the cafe became unusually busy. Jessica was carrying a tray when she suddenly heard a familiar voice. Excuse me. She froze. She knew that voice. Slowly, she turned. Calm Ji-hyun stood near the entrance. No expensive suit. No bodyguard. No luxury car visible outside. Just Ji-hyun. Her heart stopped. What are you doing here? He looked at her. I came for coffee. You could go anywhere in Seoul. I know. Then why here? He smiled gently. Because this is where you are. Jessica didn't know what to say. He approached the counter. Can I have a coffee? She looked at him. Black. He smiled. You remember? Unfortunately. They both laughed. For the first time in days, Jessica felt the tension inside her chest loosen. But she wasn't ready to forgive him. Not yet. Ji-hyun understood. He took the coffee and sat at a table near the window. He didn't pressure her. He didn't ask her to return. He simply stayed. For 3 hours. When the cafe finally closed, Jessica approached him. You've been sitting there all evening. Yes. Why? Because I wanted you to know that I can wait. She looked at him. You're a billionaire. Yes. You have thousands of things you could be doing. I do. Then why waste your time here? He smiled. Because you're worth my time. Jessica's heart softened, but she remained cautious. Ji-hyun. Yes. I can't forget what happened. I don't expect you to. I don't know if I can trust you again. I understand. He stood. I'll earn it. Then he left. Jessica watched him disappear into the rain. She whispered to herself, why do you make it so difficult to stay angry with you? A week later, Jessica received an unexpected phone call. It was Mrs. Han. Jessica? Yes. Can you come to the mansion? Jessica became nervous. Why? There's something you need to see. Jessica hesitated. Is Ji-hyun there? Yes. She almost said no. Then Mrs. Han added, he hasn't asked me to convince you to return. Jessica listened carefully. He simply wants to show you something. That made her curious. She agreed. When Jessica arrived at the mansion, everything looked familiar. The garden, the entrance, the enormous windows. But something had changed. There were fewer staff members. The house felt quieter. Ji-hyun was waiting in the living room. He stood when she entered. Thank you for coming. Jessica nodded. What's this about? He handed her a folder. She opened it. Inside were documents. She looked confused. What am I looking at? A new company project. She looked at him. I don't understand. You once told me you wanted to build something for yourself. Yes, I remembered. He pointed to the documents. This is a small food business. Jessica's eyes widened. Food! You told me you miss Nigerian food. She looked through the papers. There is a growing African community in Seoul. He continued. I thought there should be a place where people could taste food from home. Jessica stared at him. You want me to open a restaurant? No. He shook his head. I want you to decide whether you want to. She looked at him carefully. You're offering me money. No. He surprised her. I'm offering you an opportunity. What if I say no? Then nothing changes. What if I say yes? Then you own the business. Jessica's eyes widened. I can't accept something this expensive. You wouldn't be accepting it. He smiled. You'd be building it. She stared at him. Why would you do this? Ji-hyun looked directly into her eyes. Because I believe in you. Jessica's heart began racing. Then he added, and because I finally understand something. What? Helping someone doesn't mean controlling their life. Jessica became quiet. That was the first time she truly believed he had changed. She closed the folder. I need time. Ji-hyun nodded. Take all the time you need. Jessica turned toward the door. Then she stopped. She looked back at him. Ji-hyun. Yes. Thank you. His smile was gentle. You're welcome. She walked away. And for the first time since she had left the mansion, Jessica allowed herself to believe that perhaps their story wasn't over. Perhaps it was only beginning again. Jessica spent the entire night thinking about Ji-hyun's offer. By morning, she had made her decision. She returned to the mansion. Ji-hyun was in the garden when he saw her approaching. He stood immediately. You came. Jessica nodded. I've made my decision. He waited. I'll accept the opportunity. A smile slowly appeared on his face. But, Jessica added, there are conditions. Ji-hyun laughed softly. I expected that. First, I want control of the business. Agreed. Second, I want to earn my salary. Agreed. Third, she paused. I don't want special treatment. Ji-hyun smiled. Agreed. Jessica looked at him. And fourth, what? No more secrets. His smile disappeared. Then he nodded seriously. No more secrets. She held out her hand. Deal. He took her hand. Deal. But neither released the other's hand immediately. Their eyes met. Jessica smiled. Why are you looking at me like that? Ji-hyun answered honestly. Because I missed you. Her smile faded slightly. I missed you too. It was the first time she had admitted it. Ji-hyun gently squeezed her hand. Thank you for coming back. Jessica looked at him. Don't make me regret it. I won't. The next few weeks were different. Jessica wasn't simply a household employee anymore. She was building something of her own. Ji-hyun helped her find a suitable location, but he never made decisions for her. He introduced her to suppliers. She negotiated prices. He offered advice. She sometimes ignored it. And surprisingly, he enjoyed that. One afternoon, they were standing inside the unfinished restaurant. Jessica looked around. The walls were still bare. Boxes covered the floor. There was dust everywhere. Ji-hyun looked at her. What do you think? Jessica smiled. I think it needs color. How much? A lot. He laughed. I was afraid you'd say that. You asked. I know. She walked toward the kitchen. I want this place to feel warm. Like Nigeria? Exactly. She looked at him. People shouldn't come here just to eat. What should they come for? To feel at home. Ji-hyun smiled. Then let's build it. Jessica looked at him. You said let's. Yes. Are you helping me? If you'll allow me. She smiled. Okay. They spent the entire afternoon working together. At one point, Jessica accidentally got flour on his face. She froze. Ji-hyun slowly touched his cheek. You did that deliberately. No. He raised an eyebrow. Jessica laughed. You look funny. You're laughing at the billionaire. I am. He smiled. Then I suppose I deserve it. She laughed harder. Ji-hyun watched her. That sound, that smile, he had missed them. And suddenly, he realized that the woman standing in front of him was no longer someone he wanted to impress. She was someone he wanted beside him, not because she worked for him, not because she needed him, but because she made his life better. One evening, after the workers had left, Jessica and Ji-hyun remained at the restaurant. They sat at a small table near the window. Jessica was tired. She rested her head against a chair. That was a long day. Ji-hyun smiled. You survived. Barely. He pushed a glass of water toward her. Drink. She smiled. You always do that. Do what? Take care of me. He looked at her. Does it bother you? No. Good. There was a quiet moment. Then Jessica asked, why did you really choose me? Ji-hyun looked down. I told you. You wanted to test me. Yes. But why me? He was silent. Then he answered, I saw you at the interview. Jessica looked surprised. You did? Yes. What did you see? A woman who was nervous but refused to pretend she wasn't. She smiled. I was terrified. I know. How? You kept holding your handbag. Jessica laughed. You noticed that? I notice everything about you. She became quiet. Ji-hyun continued. You looked at the other candidates. They were all trying to impress the interviewer. And I wasn't. You were trying to convince yourself you belonged there. Jessica looked down. That sounded like me. He smiled. I wanted to know who you were when nobody was watching. And I found out. She looked into his eyes. What did you find? He reached across the table. His fingers gently touched hers. Someone I don't want to lose. Jessica's heart began beating faster. She didn't move her hand. Ji-hyun. Yes. I don't know what we're doing. Neither do I. He smiled. But I know what I want. What? You. Jessica stared at him. He didn't look away. For the first time in my life, I'm not asking you to trust my money. His voice softened. I'm asking you to trust my heart. Jessica's eyes became glossy. She slowly turned her hand and intertwined her fingers with his. I think... She took a breath. I already do. Ji-hyun smiled. He stood and moved closer. Jessica looked up at him. Neither spoke. He gently touched her cheek. Then he stopped. He gave her the choice. Jessica closed the distance herself. Their first kiss was soft, tender, unhurried. Not the kiss of a billionaire and his employee. Not the kiss of two people trying to prove anything. Just two people who had finally found their way back to each other. When they separated, Jessica smiled. You know what? You still owe me an apology. Ji-hyun laughed. I know. A very big one. I'll spend the rest of my life giving it to you. Jessica smiled. That's a long time. I know. And neither of them realized that someone had been watching them from across the street. Someone who had been waiting for the right moment to reveal a secret that could change everything. The next morning, Jessica arrived at the restaurant earlier than usual. She was still smiling. She couldn't stop thinking about the previous evening. Her first kiss with Ji-hyun. The way he had looked at her afterward. The way he had promised to spend his life earning her trust. For the first time, Jessica allowed herself to imagine a future with him. But as she entered the restaurant, she noticed a woman standing near the entrance. She was elegant, beautifully dressed, and clearly waiting for someone. Jessica approached her. Can I help you? The woman looked at her. You're Jessica? Yes. The woman's expression changed. My name is Seo Hyrin. Jessica waited. I need to speak with Kang Ji-hyun. He isn't here yet. Hyrin smiled. He will come. There was something about her confidence that made Jessica uncomfortable. Are you a business partner? Hyrin gave a small laugh. You could say that. Before Jessica could ask another question, a car stopped outside. Ji-hyun stepped out. The moment he saw Hyrin, he stopped. His expression became serious. What are you doing here? Hyrin looked at him calmly. We need to talk. Not here. She glanced at Jessica. I think it's already too late for that. Jessica looked between them. Ji-hyun. He immediately walked toward her. Jessica, go inside. She frowned. Why? Please. Hyrin smiled. So you haven't told her. Ji-hyun's expression hardened. Hyrin. Jessica's heart began beating faster. Told me what? Ji-hyun remained silent. Hyrin answered for him. About our engagement. Jessica froze. The entire world seemed to go silent. Engagement? She looked at Ji-hyun. He closed his eyes briefly. Jessica, it's not what you think. Hyrin laughed softly. Of course it isn't. Jessica stepped backward. Then explain it. Ji-hyun looked at her. I was engaged to her years ago. Jessica stared at him. Yes. Are you still? No. Hyrin interrupted. That isn't exactly true. Ji-hyun turned toward her. We ended it. Your family ended it, Hyrin replied. Jessica felt a knot forming in her stomach. Ji-hyun approached her. I should have told you. She shook her head. You promised no more secrets. I know. And you kept another one. I didn't think it mattered anymore. Jessica's eyes filled with tears. Maybe it didn't matter to you. She turned away. Ji-hyun reached for her hand. Jessica, she pulled away. Not now. Then she walked into the restaurant. Ji-hyun followed. Hyrin remained outside. And for the first time since their reconciliation, Jessica wondered whether she had made a terrible mistake by opening her heart again. Jessica sat alone in the restaurant office. She stared at the floor. A few minutes later, Ji-hyun entered. He didn't sit. He simply stood near the door. Jessica? She didn't look at him. Tell me everything. He nodded. My family arranged engagement when I was younger. Did you love her? No. Did she love you? I don't know. Jessica looked at him. Did you ever plan to marry her? At one point, I considered it because I believed it was what my family expected. She looked away. What happened? I ended it. When? Years ago. Then why didn't you tell me? He struggled to answer. Because I was afraid. Afraid of what? That you'd think I was still connected to her. Jessica stood. And you thought Heidi would make things better? No. Ji-hyun. She wiped her eyes. Trust doesn't mean telling someone only the things you think they can handle. He nodded. I know. She took a breath. Is she still in your life? No. Then why is she here? She wants something. What? I don't know. Jessica looked at him. Find out. He nodded. I will. Then Jessica said something that surprised him. But I don't want you to do it for me. He frowned. What do you mean? I want you to do it because you need to close that chapter of your life. Ji-hyun stared at her. She was hurt, but she wasn't trying to control him. That was Jessica. Strong even when she was afraid. He walked closer. I promise. She nodded. Okay. But neither noticed Hyrin standing outside the office. She had heard everything, and she wasn't there to win Ji-hyun back. She had come because she knew something about his family that even he didn't know. That evening, Ji-hyun met Hyrin at a quiet cafe. He sat across from her. Tell me why you're here. She placed an envelope on the table. Open it. He did. Inside were old documents. Ji-hyun looked through them. His expression changed. What is this? The original agreement between our families. He read the papers carefully. Then he looked up. This doesn't make sense. It does. Hyrin leaned forward. Your father didn't arrange our engagement because he wanted you to marry me. Ji-hyun stared at her. Then why? To protect the company. He remained silent. Hyrin continued. Years ago, your family was facing financial problems. My family agreed to help. The engagement was part of the arrangement. Ji-hyun's expression darkened. I knew about the financial agreement. You didn't know everything. What don't I know? Hyrin took a breath. The company's shares connected to that agreement were never transferred. Ji-hyun frowned. What does that mean? It means someone inside your family kept them. Who? Hyrin looked directly at him. Your uncle. Ji-hyun leaned back. He had suspected his uncle of manipulating business decisions before. But this was different. Hyrin continued. He has been using those shares to influence the company for years. Ji-hyun looked at the documents again. And why are you telling me now? Because I don't want your family to destroy what you've built. She stood. And because I owe you the truth. Ji-hyun looked up at her. What about Jessica? Hyrin smiled. She is the reason you're finally willing to fight for something other than your company. Ji-hyun said nothing. Hyrin walked away. That night, Ji-hyun returned to the mansion. Jessica was waiting in the garden. He walked toward her. You were right. She looked at him. About what? There was something I needed to resolve. He told her everything. When he finished, Jessica looked at him. Are you going to deal with it? Yes. Good. He smiled. That's all you're going to say? She smiled. You don't need me to solve everything for you. He laughed. No. He stepped closer. But I need you beside me. Jessica looked into his eyes. I am. He gently held her hand. This time, there were no secrets between them. At least, they thought there weren't. Because the next morning, Ji-hyun received a message that would change everything. Mr. Kong, we found something else in the old company records. It concerns Jessica. Ji-hyun stared at the screen. His smile disappeared. Why would Jessica's name be in his family's records? His first thought was that it had to be a mistake. Jessica had nothing to do with his family business. At least, that was what he believed. He immediately called his legal advisor. Send me the records. They're being delivered now. How long? 10 minutes. Make it 5. Ji-hyun ended the call. He found Jessica in the restaurant kitchen. She was arranging ingredients for the day's menu. When she saw his expression, her smile disappeared. What happened? He didn't answer immediately. Jessica, I need to ask you something. What? Did you ever hear the name Kong Holdings before coming to Korea? She looked confused. No. Are you sure? Yes. Did anyone in Nigeria ever mention my family to you? Jessica shook her head. No. Why? Ji-hyun took a breath. Your name appeared in an old company record. Jessica stared at him. My name? Yes. She slowly put down what she was holding. I don't understand. Neither do I. For the first time, Ji-hyun saw genuine fear in her eyes. He immediately took her hand. Whatever this is, we'll find out together. An hour later, the record arrived. Ji-hyun opened the file. His eyes moved across the page. Then he stopped. Jessica leaned closer. What does it say? He pointed to a name. Michael Okafor. Jessica's face changed. That was my father. Ji-hyun looked at her. Your father? She nodded slowly. He passed away several years ago. Ji-hyun continued reading. Michael Okafor had once worked as an international financial consultant. Years earlier, he had assisted Kong Holdings during a major expansion into Africa. Jessica stared at the documents. My father never told me any of this. Ji-hyun turned another page. Then he froze. There was a photograph. His grandfather stood beside Jessica's father, and beside them was a much younger version of Ji-hyun. Jessica looked at the photograph in disbelief. You knew my father? Ji-hyun shook his head. No, I was too young. He continued reading. Then he found something even more surprising. A handwritten note. If anything happens to me, make sure Michael's family receives what belongs to them. Ji-hyun looked at Jessica. What does that mean? She shook her head. I don't know. But now they both understood something. Jessica's arrival in Korea might not have been an accident after all. Ji-hyun spent the next 2 days investigating the old records. He discovered that Jessica's father had helped Kong Holdings recover from a serious financial crisis. But shortly after completing the work, Michael had returned to Nigeria. The payment promised to him had never been fully made. Instead, the money had disappeared into another account, an account controlled by Ji-hyun's uncle. Ji-hyun was furious, but Jessica stopped him from reacting emotionally. Don't do anything because you're angry. He looked at her. Your father was cheated. I know. I should confront my uncle. You should. Ji-hyun smiled. You sound like a lawyer. She laughed. My father always told me to think before acting. Your father sounds wise. He was. Jessica looked at the photograph. I wish he had told me more. Ji-hyun gently placed his hand over hers. Maybe he wanted to protect you. She looked at him. From what? From the things he couldn't fix. Jessica's eyes became wet. Ji-hyun pulled her gently into his arms. She rested her head against his chest. For several moments, neither spoke. Then Jessica whispered, I came to Seoul because I wanted a new beginning. Ji-hyun held her tighter. And you found one. She smiled against his chest. Yes. The next morning, Ji-hyun confronted his uncle. His uncle sat calmly behind his desk. So, he said, you finally discovered it. Ji-hyun placed the documents on the table. You stole money that belonged to Jessica's family. His uncle smiled. Careful. No. Ji-hyun's voice was calm. You should be careful. His uncle leaned back. Do you know what happens if you expose this? I don't care. You could damage the company. I'll rebuild it. You could lose everything. Ji-hyun looked directly at him. I've already lost things more valuable than money. His uncle frowned. What does that mean? Ji-hyun stood. It means I'm not the man you use control. He picked up the documents. And I'm not going to let you control Jessica either. His uncle's expression changed. For the first time, he realized Ji-hyun wasn't fighting for the company. He was fighting for the woman he loved. A few weeks later, everything was resolved. Ji-hyun's uncle was removed from the company. The missing funds connected to Jessica's father were recovered, but Jessica refused to take the money personally. Instead, she used part of it to establish a small scholarship program in her father's name. Ji-hyun supported her decision. You really don't want anything for yourself? Jessica smiled. I already had what I wanted. He raised an eyebrow. What? She walked closer. A chance to build something meaningful. Ji-hyun smiled. That's not what I meant. I know. She laughed. He gently took her hand. The restaurant had officially opened. It was beautiful. Warm lights, African artwork, Korean touches. The smell of Nigerian food filled the air. People from different backgrounds sat together. Jessica stood near the entrance, watching everyone. Ji-hyun came beside her. "You did it!" She smiled. "We did it!" He shook his head. "No." He looked at her proudly. "You did it!" Jessica turned toward him. "And you? I just believed in you." She smiled. "You know, when I first met you, I thought you were a poor man who didn't know how to find his way around a kitchen." Ji-hyun laughed. "And when I first met you, I thought you were someone I needed to test." Jessica raised an eyebrow. "That didn't work out very well for you." "No." He smiled. "It worked out perfectly." She looked at him. "Really?" He nodded. "Because I thought I was going to discover whether you loved money." He gently touched her cheek. "Instead, I discovered the woman I want to spend the rest of my life with." Jessica's eyes filled with tears. "Ji-hyun," he reached into his pocket. Her eyes widened. "Wait!" He got down on one knee. The restaurant became quiet. Jessica covered her mouth. Ji-hyun looked up at her. "Jessica, I once believed that having everything meant never needing anyone." He smiled. "Then you came into my life." He took out a ring. "And you taught me that the greatest wealth isn't sitting inside a bank account." His voice softened. "It's having someone who sees you when you have nothing to offer." Jessica was crying now. "Will you marry me?" She laughed through her tears. "You already know the answer." He smiled. "I want to hear it." Jessica held out her hand. "Yes." The room erupted in applause. Ji-hyun placed a ring on her finger. Then he stood and pulled her into his arms. They kissed as everyone celebrated around them. And Jessica realized something. She had come to Seoul looking for a job. She had never expected to find a home. She had never expected to meet a billionaire. And she certainly had never expected to fall in love with a man who had once pretended to have nothing. But perhaps that was the beautiful thing about love. Sometimes it doesn't arrive looking perfect. Sometimes it arrives disguised as an ordinary person. Sometimes it makes mistakes. Sometimes it asks for a second chance. And when two people are willing to choose each other again, even after everything goes wrong, love can become something stronger than either of them imagined. For Jessica and Kang Ji-hyun, their story had begun with a test, but ended with something neither money nor power could ever buy. Thanks you for listening and watching the story.